name is Wilfried Boch, and I'm from Würzburg in Germany. First, I want to say that I'm a concerned father, and secondly, I want to say that I'm a psychiatrist and a psychotherapist. First, I didn't see my two sons for 15 years because my wife had a severe psychosis, and she was treated for 10 years in a clinic. This experience, the experience of pain and everything, all the things which parents experience, I know now, well, you know, and I went, and the second part, I brought this experience in my practice. I'm in the boat of parental alienation since 20 years, and in PASG since its beginning. I'm very fascinated from this work. This is why I came. I decided to come because of my stroke. I didn't fly for 7 years. This time I said, well, I will try, and nothing happened. Yes, my sons came back 15 years later, and I wouldn't have recognized them on the road. This experience was very painful, but viewing back, very helpful for me, for my work. In my practice, I have adult children of divorce with severe problems of identity, of relation, self-consciousness, all what Amy Baker researched and has written wonderfully, I experienced personally in my work. And the second group were traumatized parents, at the beginning more fathers than mothers, but later fathers as well as mothers. So PA is not at all a gender-specific issue. Both personalities are able to manipulate the child. Yes, and then I wanted to say, when my boys came back, this changed very much. This changed from the depression, from the pain. It was away. Suddenly it was away. And today, after 20 years, I'm reconciled with my ex-wife, and we are invited from the family, we are invited together from the family of my youngest son's companion for Christmas. And I will go. Yes. I have written this book 3 years ago, and it's there. You can take it as long. You can have it. I brought it in my rucksack. Thank you. Yes. Okay, this is my experience, and now I want to give it to
Veronica.
We are 4 people from 4 different countries: Brazil, Sweden, France, and Germany. So parental alienation is an international problem, and I can't understand that we discuss the issue today after 30 years on a high level. And we have to work on this.
So the floor is yours, Veronica.
Thank you very much. Does that mic work there?
I think so,
It
yes.
does? Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Veronica Bird-Mahaffey. Hello, okay, then let's have this mic here. Thank you for letting me know. Hi, my name is Veronica Bird-Mahaffey. I'm originally from Brazil, been here for most of my life though. I would like to start my presentation, first of all, thanking Dr. Burnett for giving me this rare opportunity to be here and share my story, and also to thank Lee that helped me with my presentation. This is my very first PowerPoint presentation. I don't think I could have been able to have prepared this if it wasn't Lee's help. So anyhow, I'll get started by introducing my alienator. His name is Reg, and he's the father of my 2 sons, Ryan and Ramsey. We met in California making movies. I was an executive producer on a PG-rated movie called Quest of the Delta Knights with David Warner and Olivia Hussey from Romeo and Juliet. I had an acting part in the film. He was the producer. I invested $25,000, so I became an executive producer. So from the get-go, it was pretty clear to Reg that I had financial stability. He had previously co-founded, give a little bit of background about him so it all makes sense, and I promise to keep it, short and concise and engaging. He had previously co-founded a defense contracting company here in Maryland, and they did work for the Naval Research Lab. He co-owned that, and he held a PhD from the University of Maryland in nuclear sciences. For myself, I had a previous career when I lived in California as a legal secretary. I also ran a chain of convalescent homes called Birdhaven Christian Convalescent Homes, and also had race horses, a stable of race horses out there. And I started taking acting lessons in Los Angeles and eventually became a full-time actress. So Reg and I made a film back in 1992. And after the 6 weeks or so when the film was over, it was filmed in Santa Rosa, he flew back to Maryland. He lived in Maryland, and I went back to Los Angeles where I lived. Shortly thereafter, he came back to Los Angeles for post-production, and things moved pretty quickly, and before I knew it, I had moved to Maryland in March of 1993, and I was pregnant with my first son, Ryan. He was in the process of divorcing his previous wife that wanted to leave him, and he later told me, because I couldn't understand, when he showed me pictures, I couldn't really understand what was about his ex-wife that actually attracted him to her, because it seemed like that he wanted something totally different. To my surprise, he looked me straight in the eye and he said, well, she held a master's degree, she was Aryan, she had blue eyes, so his children would have blue eyes because he had blue eyes. That shocked me a little bit because I'm Latin, I have brown eyes, and I don't have a master's degree. So, but I guess, he liked what he saw. So we had 2 children. He had 2 children by a previous marriage, 4 and 2. Lovely, lovely, lovely children. He adored them. He was very loving to them. And I would say that's probably what made me fall in love with him, was the way he spoke with his children. I said, oh my gosh, I want this man to be the father of my children. He was so loving. Well, despite the difference in race and age, he's 11 years older, we had a very strong and sudden connection, and we did fall in love. Met in September of 92, had our first child by the end of 93, and the second child by the end of 94. We married when I was 7 months pregnant with my younger child, Ramsey, and together we started a joint business venture as property managers and landlords here in Maryland. And I also worked as a judicial interpreter for the state of Maryland, and I traded stocks heavily. I was a day trader, and I was pretty good at it. He could never understand that he had PhD, and he couldn't understand the stock market, and I didn't have a degree, and I understood. And I says, the trick is, you don't understand the stock market. You just pay attention to it and you respond. But he could never understand that because of his PhD mind. So much for that. I purchased my house in Maryland where we lived, which was he liked that he had a woman that had the money to purchase a house. And we remained married for 16 years. So now we're gonna talk about early signs. So I became pregnant with my first child right away. I didn't know I could get pregnant. I had never been pregnant before. Was married before, never got pregnant. So I was very happy when I found out I was pregnant. So immediately when I told him Dad, he wanted me to have an abortion. And he was pretty adamant about it. And I said, no, I'm not gonna have an abortion, I'm having my child. And I refused, and I carried Ryan to term. And while I was still pregnant, I overheard him on the phone. I had already moved to Maryland, talking to his soon-to-be ex-wife on the phone, and he had actually agreed with her that not to reveal that Ryan, the child I was carrying, was related to his children by the previous marriage. They thought that that was the way to go. So I knew right then and there that I had a huge problem, but I had already moved to Maryland, I was already pregnant, and there was no going back. So when Ryan was a newborn, about 3 days old, for no apparent reason, I was in my bedroom. Reg came, picked up the baby, tossed the baby up in the air like if it was a football, and he laid it back on his arms, and I was absolutely shocked. As a result, there was an injury to Ryan's neck. It was crooked, a torsicolor that later was diagnosed as torsicolor, requiring physical therapy in order to correct it. Chin to shoulder, shoulder to chin, back and forth until it got corrected. I never really saw that my son's head was crooked. It took my friend in California when we were in post-production to say, Veronica, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but did you know that your child's head is crooked? And that's when I looked and I acknowledged, because I just didn't see it. My child was just perfect and beautiful to me. So shortly thereafter, became pregnant with Ramsey, and again, same old, have an abortion. No, I won't. Had Ramsey. Ramsey was born. So Reg would often, in front of the family, refer to Travis, his firstborn from his first marriage, as his #1 son, in front of family and in front of Ryan when he couldn't speak yet. And that really made me upset and angry. And finally, during a family gathering, I told him, if I hear you one more time referring to Travis as your #1 son in front of me or in front of my children, that's it. They're all #1. So, shortly after Ramsey's birth, there was the beginning of the health issues with Ramsey. So Ramsey at age 2 was diagnosed with a pretty severe case of regressive autism. He was talking, he was pointing, he was doing everything, and one day I woke up, that kid was totally gone. You could go behind him, scream his name, he would never acknowledge that. He stopped pointing. Kids' first communication is really not the word. That's the first word they speak, is the little finger. Ramsey stopped pointing, and then as a 10-year-old, Ramsey was diagnosed with a growth hormone deficiency due to overexposure to prednisone, which doctors prescribed for treating the autism. The prednisone worked. The brain was inflamed. He was on high doses of prednisone for about, I think, 9 months to a year, so he became Cushnoid. But the prednisone, I guess, reduced the inflammation of the brain. In his case, it was an inflammation. And then slowly, he recovered from the regressive autism. He still has autism, but he became verbal again and close to normal. So at that time, when my son was diagnosed with regressive autism, the same doctor that diagnosed them also diagnosed my husband with Asperger's syndrome. And then I had Ryan, my older son, tested, and then he came back in the Asperger's spectrum also. And then after Ramsey and Ryan's diagnosis, I worked tirelessly in early special intervention with Ramsey, and that was a 24/7 job. That kid was 2 years old, and he was going to school every day at Shepherd Pratt. They had a special preschool class for children with autism, one-on-one, and it was just total insanity. After all the intensive intervention, I got home, and then the early interventionists came, and it was, that's all I did was make sure that Ramsey would not regress again. And I would calculate every word and count the words. I think when I got to 1,000 words, I stopped counting. So I educated myself thoroughly about the educational practice of autism and became deeply, deeply involved in raising autism awareness. I eventually produced a film called The Different Shades of Autism, the screening and diagnosis of autistic spectrum disorders through my charitable organization. And this educational film included the work of pediatric neurologists Andrew Zimmerman from Kennedy Krieger and Stephen Mott from Children's and others. This film later was re-edited for the American Academy of Pediatrics, and they in turn marketed the film to pediatricians worldwide. Later, I met Dr. Rosalie Greenberg, and she worked strictly with children with bipolar spectrum disorders, and she convinced me to produce a film about bipolar disorders in children and adolescents, and I agreed, so we produced Rescuing Childhood, Understanding Bipolar Disorders in Children and Adolescents. I learned a whole lot doing that. My husband showed no interest in very little affection toward the children, really. He never acknowledged our children, Ryan and Ramsey, until the bomb dropped, the autism bomb dropped. Then he kind of woke up a little bit and he started paying attention. I'm going to talk now about gaslighting. He tried to make me believe I was crazy and overreacting. True, I'm Brazilian. True, I am emotive. True that I am demonstrative, but that doesn't make me crazy. So Reg used gaslighting techniques to undermine me. I noticed early warning signs. When I noticed the early warning signs of Ramsey's autism, he stopped talking and he stopped pointing, and he appeared deaf, and Reg would just dismiss it all and say, Veronica, you're overreacting. You need to look for a psychiatrist. You're not well. I says, well, Reg, I'll be more than happy to look for a psychiatrist, but that's not going to make the autism go away. So, Ramsey was diagnosed right away at age 2 at Kennedy Krieger with regressive autism, and that was the only appointment that Reg accompanied me to related to Ramsey's many health issues. I noticed warning signs of growth hormone deficiency in Ramsey because Ramsey's feet didn't grow for 3 years, excuse me. And my children are 13 months apart, and it just didn't seem right to me. Ramsey just was not keeping up with Ryan. So again, Veronica was crazy. You're imagining things. There's nothing wrong. So, okay, crazy Veronica goes to pediatric endocrine at Johns Hopkins, and they do that 4-hour test. They hook you up to the machine. The next day the phone rings. Mrs. Mahaffey, hurry back. We need to start him ASAP on growth hormone, or at the very best, it's going to be 4-9. Again, husband dismissed me as crazy, imagining things. And, the fact that Ramsey had the same shoe size for 3 years, it was just me imagining things. And so the diagnosis came, and the growth hormone started, and Ramsey started growing. Then Ramsey contracted Lyme disease, which led to Bell's palsy. I one day woke up, half of his face was paralyzed. So I went to the pediatrician's office. Of course, he was on vacation, somebody was subbing for him. It was a Friday, and next thing I know, I didn't understand Lyme's disease. I'm from Brazil, moved here from California, never really heard about Lyme's disease. Next thing I know, the same day he's admitted at Johns Hopkins. We're there for 3 days, install a PICC line, and then he had to take a boatload of antibiotics through the PICC line for about 6 months. Again, Veronica was crazy. She's imagining all this. She loves going to the doctor, and she loves going to hospitals, okay. So he curiously took very large quantities of vitamins. When I say large quantities, I would say maybe 20 or 30 different pills, whatever they were, vitamins. And he would also prepare my little vitamin container. Every time I attempted to take my vitamins, despite of taking after breakfast, I always got very sick. So naturally, I didn't want to take my vitamins. And what I found quite curious was that he would become really disproportionately enraged if I didn't take my vitamins, and we would explode into arguments, and I didn't want to take it because it made me sick. So to this day, I still don't understand what it was that he was putting in my vitamin pill thing that made me so sick. So the increasingly bizarre behavior of my ex-husband. His company was bought out, and he received approximately a $5 million payout. During that time, I had been very successful trading the stock market. I made a lot of money. And I turned to him because I knew what he was thinking, and I said, Reg, now is not the time to enter the market. This has been going on for a while. Now is not the time, because I knew he was not the time that would invest and be in front of the computer like I would. Well, he invested the $5 million, he took a $3 million hit, basically overnight. Came to me with his tail between his legs and told me about it and says, Reg, what can you do? It's gone, let's go forward, you know. When Reg's mothers died, when Lila, she died at the age of 97, they could not find her will. So, what did he do? He went downstairs to his computer, he typed a will, he signed the will, he marched on down to the circuit court, he opened up probate, he came back home, bragged about it, bragged to me about it. Couldn't find Lila's will, so he simply created a will, forged her name, opened up probate. You know, he just couldn't wait to get the money, and he said, who's going to complain, you know, because the assets were divided equally between Reg and his brother and his sister. So, but I find it very disturbing that he could do that. He also forged my name frequently in many documents, okay? What you're looking here, I'm a Section 8 landlord, so I do business with Housing Authority, meaning that the government pays most of their rent. These are my properties, and you can see that this letter is from WHOH, a company that he owned, and those are all my properties, and you can read that, you know, that's his signature, and he just simply signs my name. You don't have to be a handwriting expert to see that whoever signed Reg Mahaffey is the same person that signed Veronica Mahaffey. I have tons and tons of documents like this in my house. Obviously, I'm just going to show one. So, let's see, where did I leave off here? One day, I was feeling very sick to my stomach, and my husband refused to help me. And I asked him to get the blood pressure gauge so I could check my blood pressure, so he just couldn't help me. So I thought, well, this guy is getting really bad. Then one day, he was coming back from Harvard because my older son was attending a university program for high school students, and I was already sick, so I couldn't go visit Ryan. So when Reg came back from Harvard that day, he came in through the back door, and I always feed my dogs leftovers, and there were leftover food on the floor. I kid you not, he walked right on down to that bowl, He picked up that bowl, he ate the dog food, and he says, "Yum, yum, vittles." It doesn't end there. Excessive masturbation throughout the house. My sister was staying with us and she fell asleep in the family room to tell me when she woke up he was masturbating. Not that there's anything wrong with masturbating, but typically when people do that, they do it privately. My son Ryan was attending a prep school in Mercersburg Academy, 2 hours from where we live. And Reg would pretty much go to every single football practice that Ryan had in every game. And I wouldn't go because I had Ramsey to take care of. So he was asked to leave the game by the director because he was getting involved with the coach. He believed that he was the coach. He was just taking over the instructions on how the kids should play the game. He would make a habit of these so-called Section 8 tenants. Sometimes they have co-pays. Maybe the co-pay is $100, maybe it's $200. So the first of the month, he would make the rounds. He would go to all this house to pick up these little pittance of money from here and there. And this one particular day, he got into a fist fight with a minor and came home and told me about it. So when we went on a cruise, the year that we separated, the year, the last Christmas, we were all having a dinner, very nice dinner. He got upset, he disappeared, nobody could find him for 5 hours on that boat. When I had my first abdominal surgery in 2007, I was sent home the same day with a draining tube on my abdomen and instructions on how to drain the fluid. The instructions were given to my ex-husband. Well, when I got home, I was out of it. That here in America, they pump you up with morphine and they shove you in the car because nobody spends the night at the hospital here. That's America. So I was out of it. And so I remember waking up home in bed and Reg towering over me and my older son right next to him. And he grabbed my draining tube, supposedly, I guess, to drain it, and he yanked it out. So, back to the hospital. Washington Medical Center on a Sunday. At that time, I told him I want a divorce. So he did everything. "Oh, I love you, you're the love of my life, blah, 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 blah." So it took me 2 years to forgive him, but we did stay married for another 2 years. So fast forward to 2010, my health was declining, and my primary care doctor found a nodule on my neck. Well, this nodule turned out to be 9 nodules, and it turned out to be cancerous. Many doctors kept asking me, "Veronica, have you been exposed to radiation?" Because we don't see people with 9 tumors on their neck. This is quite unusual. Have you been? And these are different hospitals, not just one hospital. I said no. The only radiation that I can recall in particular is my husband. He's a nuclear scientist. That's the only radiation that comes to mind. So, sudden break here. His behavior became suddenly very, very erratic. My husband, I had told him when he was acting very, very crazy, I said, "Listen, Reg, the only way that we can stay married will be for you to seek a psychiatrist and seek a neurologist. Because I really don't know if the problem is psychiatric or neurological, because there's some things going on here that I just don't understand." Like, for example, he would go on a conference to North Carolina, get there, and then call me on the phone and ask me where he was going. I said, "Don't you know what you're going? This is the hotel." I mean, just crazy things like that. So, so he was diagnosed by a very prominent NIH psychiatrist and neurologist all in one. Very well known. There's not too many of them in the DC area. He diagnosed him with mania. I stayed out of the doctor's office for about 4 months because I didn't want to be telling the doctor my opinion. So anyhow, the doctor put him on lithium, but subsequently when he would go in for the blood check, the lithium was never on the little window where it needs to be, which is the therapeutical level. So whether he was taking the lithium or not, I don't know. So by then, my health declined pretty quickly. We're now in 2010, summer of 2010, I was diagnosed with a very, very bizarre strain of H. pylori bacteria infection that actually took really 2 years to be eradicated. And simultaneously with a gallbladder problem, polyp, that needed to be removed. So now we're in October of 2010, 6 weeks on antibiotics for the H. pylori, gallbladder removed. I was complaining of nausea, I'm not feeling well. You know, I got double vision, that some days I just see double, some days I just don't see well. And then shortly thereafter, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. That's my meningioma. So it was located right behind my carnivorous sinus cavity. And it was basically, I was seen on a Friday, pre-op on Monday, I was operated on Tuesday. As I was preparing for surgery, you know, I know you already went to the Dr. Bram's letter. On the 22nd, I was at Johns Hopkins pre-oping all day from my full bilateral craniotomy, and I said to them, I have to leave by, at the very latest, 3:30, because I have to run down to the circuit court, because I had to respond to his petition for a limited divorce. He didn't want a divorce. He didn't want to split the money, so he filed for a limited divorce. So I did make it to the circuit court, gave the letter and this letter from Dr. Bram from Johns Hopkins, letting them know why I couldn't be in court, you know, and so back up to where then, simultaneously as I was diagnosed with the meningioma and had my craniotomy, he opened up various court cases in multiple courthouses against me. So you can see that there's a negligent case, there's a DJ, a CN, a DL, and somehow he filed a negligent case against me, and a judge awarded him $1,150,001. And let me call your attention that has been satisfied. Did we? Yeah, satisfied. Enter satisfied right there. Yeah. I don't even know what the loss, I mean, you know, I had so many health issues, but this guy was at it, you know, he just was, but that wasn't the end of it. He wasn't satisfied with the $1.150 million $1. Then he came back at me for an additional $32,000. I guess I was paying for his attorney's fees. And then he sued me for another $25,000 relating to an expense to one of the houses, something that had to do with the sewer. At that point, his attorney just, I guess, withdrew his appearance from his case. So between my pre-operation work and my surgery, I appeared in court to answer the claims. Then I filed my own paperwork to countersue for divorce, thereby blocking his attempt to seize all my assets and his demand for $6,000 a month in child support. So he ties up all my assets, gets a judge to order me to pay $6,000. I can't get the money because it's all tied up. So he gets a judge to sign an incarceration order, which I found taped to my front door. So I march on down to the circuit court, give the clerk the paper, they handcuff me, and they take me to the Anne Arundel County Detention Center. When I got to the Anne Arundel County Detention Center, a nurse looked at me and she said, "Honey, would you like to see me flush your medications down the toilet?" Of course, I was freaking out because I knew I didn't have a thyroid. Without a Centroid, I would die. I knew if I didn't have my 4,000 milligrams of Capra, which is an anesthesia medication, I could start seizing. I had adrenal insufficiency. I knew that without my prednisone, I could go into God knows what. So, nice man, you know. So we got the incarceration order. So a friend bailed me out, $36,000. And I immediately sold my car within a week and paid this friend back cash. So I didn't have a car for a year. So at this point, I was beginning to fear for my life and my safety. So I fled. I spent 6 months in Brazil, changed my residence, went through the court records and changed my residency. When I heard the divorce was finalized, then I felt it was safe to come back home. Then I sold my jewelry that I had from family, bought a car. We're wrapping up. And went to California, never saw my children again. The impact on the children. Ryan, since I only have 5 minutes, I'm going to have to paraphrase this. Ryan is 23. He graduated from the University of Maryland, physics major. He moved to New York. He works as a bartender. He wrote a letter. He posted on Facebook that he's bisexual. Ramsey, I saw him once walking down a very dangerous road by my house, because, by the way, my ex-husband bought a house 1 street from my house. Okay? So I saw Ramsey walked on a very dangerous road. Many accidents happened there, and I stopped the car and I go, Ramsey, it's Mama, it's Mama. He looked at me like if I was the freeway strangler. He ran. I knew that there was nothing I could do. So he took a $300,000 line of credit on my house, never saw the money. He ran with the $300,000. And where do you want me to go? Leave for the few minutes. So I guess my takeaway point, the abuse and alienation starts small, but eventually snowball rapidly. You go from being a happy family to being ostracized, targeted parent in a fractured family. Your relationship with your children can be hijacked. You cannot control what's happening. It doesn't matter what you do. It really doesn't. I just thank God for my faith, and I thank God for my sorrows and my suffering, because I'm a much better person, and I have reinvented my life, and I have formulated a new life for myself, and I'm a very happy, complete person. Now, what can we do about this? I'll go quickly. The judicial system, okay? My question is, why is it possible for a person to open up so many court cases in different courthouses with a divorce pending? Is there a possibility of coordination and consolidation of cases in cases such as mine? Is this being used as a tool of intimidation and overwhelming victims' mental and financial resources? When I was incarcerated, the nurse at the jail confiscated my post-surgery meds, an act of cruelty, and invited me to watch her flush medications down the toilet. How can they do this? Don't they understand the label from the National Institutes of Health? I guess not. Lawyers appointed to represent minors, court psychologists. How can we possibly get a clear picture of a child's life from 1 or 2 brief meetings with a so-called lawyer or psychologist representing the child? Do they have any psychology training? Could they be trained to spot warning signs of mental illness and parental alienation? Children need to be physically removed from the alienating parent and placed either with a targeted parent or at the very minimum in a neutral situation. How can this be accomplished? Perjury is a more common than we know in high conflict divorces. Are these grave enough consequences for perjury? And once discovered, should these perjury cases be addressed? Should they be punished? Should there be consequences for judges and lawyers that allow and participate in the victimization of targeted parents, because people's lives are being destroyed, parents and children alike? Many targeted parents end up committing suicide. I survived only because of my personal strength and my great faith. Legislative actions. A system needs to be put in place to handle high conflict divorces where there is evidence of parental alienation. Judges, lawyers, mediators, child representatives in court, custody evaluator, court psychologists need guidelines, clear-cut guidelines when there's suspicion of or evidence of parental alienation. In all other industries in the world, there are inspections and there's accountability. And why is there immunity for judges, lawyers, and court-appointed psychologists? That I don't understand. And why are there no laws in place to address parental alienation when it comes through the court system to protect the children and the targeted parents? So I hope that I didn't bore you with my story, and I hope that somehow it might be useful in preventing something like this happening to somebody else, because it did happen. And it was much worse than this presentation. I just couldn't get it all in.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And the suffering from people is very heavy to take. And this is perhaps not, we can't go into your suffering. I'm sorry for that. But you have made suggestions for the future, and I thank you for it. We all thank you for that. Great that you can do that. And now it's Olga Odine will have the floor. Do you want to have this microphone?
Maybe. First of all, I want to apologize for my English. It comes from long time ago. Nowadays, I'm interpreter, but of course not in English. I'm a court and police interpreter in Portuguese from Brazil. I spent 15 years in Brazil. I worked 15 years in Brazil as an environmental biologist. And I can swear you, I didn't got crazy in Brazil. Maybe I was a kind of eccentric before it, that's the way I came back. And I'm court interpreter, so in Russian, so my English, I try to do my best. Well, my name is Olga. I'm from France, Paris, not Paris, Texas, Paris, France. When I came back from Brazil in 70 years ago, I went through a terrible divorce, like all of you knows. A severe PA, so I lost my kids 17 years ago. I haven't seen them since that time. Sometimes I can get a picture on the web. I don't contact them on Facebook because then they close their Facebook. But I won't talk about my experience as a targeted mother because, you know, all of you have a lot of cases of targeted parents. I would like to talk about a non-profit organization called ACALPA, Association contre l'aliénation parentale, that we have founded, me and another friend of mine, in 2003 in France. One psychologist told us, never do something against, we have to do something for. And parental alienation is so weird, it's a kind of taboo word. We don't talk about parental alienation in France on that time. So, but somebody has to talk about it, and it has to be a woman, it has to be a mother. Because if the father is talking about parental alienation, it will be rejected by courts, by everybody in the system. So we are, and since the time, we have targeted mothers and have targeted fathers in ACALPA. Well, why? Probably because the extreme feminists went to extreme feminist organization, and the extreme fathers went to extreme male organization. So ACALPA, you have the website. Where I have to click? Okay. On the border. No. No, not that. No, not the website. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me and my fellow friend, Jean-Charles, who is from Jean-Charles. Please stand up. He's a targeted but a successful ex-targeted father. So if you have some questions to ask to him, please. He fought during 5 years. He has fought during 5 years to get his son back. And some months ago, his son is living at his home now. And Jean-Charles is the author of our website and Facebook. So I talk about it. And then you have a big hello from all the targeted parents from France. So that's how they look like. They are quite ordinary, how we say, ordinary and normal people, just like, I say, you and me. And that's the way we work. Let's see our fundamentals. This morning dedicated to the way to communicate, to educate. Well, in France, we don't say educate. Parents give education. Professionals give training courses. It's a kind of discrepancy in the words. So our fundamentals from the beginning. We are a self-help group of alienated parents. We always talk and act with respect to people and to the law. We focus on the fundamental rights of the child. We always talk about targeted mothers and fathers. And when we go to radio or TV show, always we have one mother and one father, or we don't go. We work with all the professionals concerned. We invest our energy only in positive actions. So we don't find all the creeps who are against parental alienation, because that's their problem, and they probably will die with this problem, and we don't have time sufficient and energy sufficient to fight against them. And finally, we as parents remain always within our boundaries. We can help, we can inform, but we are not attorneys, we are not judges, we are not psychologists, we are good friends, we are coaches, but we are not psychiatrists. Well, and what was our strategy all these years, from all these years ago to now? I told you I am an environmental biologist. So I have been working in different countries, in South America, Brazil, Africa, in Réunion, on diseases, on water management. What was my job? My professional competence is to ask questions and try to solve them. So the problem, and to make a, how to say, a web, where different professionals, a platform, expert platform. So the question was, what's the problem? Who is concerned? Who is involved? And how can we solve the problem? So we took a kind of risk policy approach. Why? Because a risk policy approach gives some obligation to the state. What's a risk approach? You have to identify a dangerous phenomenon. The danger is present and for the future. Parental alienation is a dangerous phenomenon for the families, for the children, for the families now and for the future. A lot of families have to be concerned. Yes, parental alienation, we have a lot of separation, a lot of divorce in France, and a lot of kids are concerned. You need some serious, trusted information about this risk. Yes, we have that. We have a lot of publication, we have a lot of books, and we can explain what's PA. We can identify what's PA. So,
tell about the videos also.
I'll tell. So, in a risk policy approach, the state, who is compelled to protect the vulnerable people, minors are vulnerable people, they have to find treatment, and treatment must be worked out for severe cases, so problems have to be solved, and prevention is obligatory. Information and prevention is obligatory. So that was our strategy, and still, what we did for that. Well, we say, let's talk about PA everywhere. Let's start by the media, by the newspaper. How a campus started. It started on a TV program in 2003. I have been invited to tell about my targeted mother story, and I had on a very popular TV program, and next to me was sitting the psychiatrist, maybe Dr. Burnett know about him, Paul Bensoussan, who by that time was the only psychiatrist in France who had the courage to talk about parental alienation. So here we are in a TV program, and the journalist said, "So, Dr. Bensoussan, can you explain what is parental alienation?" And here are 3 million people who were listening to parental alienation. And Paul explained what it is, and that my case was parental alienation. Next time, the forum of the TV program was just filled up of parents contacting the journalists, and the journalists sent all the contacts to me, especially mothers, because it was the first time a targeted mother was invited on TV, because historically, before, when in a divorce, the woman got who got the kids, got the car, the bank account, and the apartment. But nowadays, women are in France working just like men. So these arguments are over. But still in the image in the mind, they are targeted father. Yes, you can understand targeted father. Father cannot see his kids. And for the first time, targeted woman was talking about this story. So of course, a lot of targeted women wrote me and wrote to the program, and we saw that there was a lot of people concerned. I said, thank you for, you talked about me and my kids. I said, gosh, I don't know them, I don't know this woman, I don't know her kids. Well, I'm a scientist, I studied many years, and work on social responsibility. I think, my girl, that's the time you talk about social responsibility for the others. Maybe you can work on social responsibility for yourself. And instead of working on environmental risk, there's a social risk right in front of everybody's eyes. So that's how we start working with media. And you know, you have to be well known. If you're nobody, nobody will listen to you. You have to be bankable. You have to be kind of media people. I'm not an artist. I'm a scientist. Scientists, they're not very bankable. But we talked to newspaper. We wrote articles in newspaper, men and women, in radio programs, in TV programs, and then we got a press book. And that's very good. When you say, well, that's a Figaro, that's a Monde, that's this radio, and you know, if you go to the hairdresser, you can see Paris Match, it's very good, very much. And politics, they say, wow, they talk about, media are talking about these parents. That's interesting. And the second question is, how many are you? How many votes you represent? And of course you say, we are too much. You know, our aim is to be 0 parent involved. So it's a kind of kicking away this question of how powerful this organization can be. But we meet other parental organizations in France, in US, so we have a lot of friends from Germany, from Belgium, who went. Why? I explain to you. We participate in roundtables, in TV programs with other parents, in debates. We organize congresses for professionals, and we invite professionals from other countries. From Belgium, where they were talking about parental alienation for like 10 years before France. States now it's like 20 years before France, but it's a long way. And well, it's American, you know, it's American stuff, it doesn't fit in France. Well, but Belgium, they speak French, you know, and if Belgium can talk and act against parental alienation, that means it fits for France. So we invited French-speaking professionals to talk about parental alienation. That was 2007. And who paid for that? The Fondation pour l'Enfance. And the president of this foundation is a wife of the ex-president Giscard d'Estaing. So it's very respectable foundation. So we got a partnership with them. They paid for the 2 days conferences. We had like 300 professionals. And suddenly parental alienation became obvious. Of course, everybody knows what parental alienation is. But the words, they kind of, because in France when you're alienated, you're mad. It's kind of misunderstanding of the word. We have two meanings for alienated. That means you're estranged or you're crazy. And we had a psychiatric movement, alienist movement. And of course, when you talk about how people can get mad, that means there's a risk of the worst disease on the world, madness, and anybody can get it. So we work after this Congress, we have Congress books, and we have the press book was increasing. We did even better. There was one deputy that contacted us and said, Olga, we want to meet you. And that was even before, in 2005, to talk about, to do something against parental alienation. I said, you sure you're talking about parental alienation? She said, yes. He said, we have a website, we know it, but I want to see you. So I went there and she told me, you know, parental alienation can happen to anybody, even to my best friend. And he's divorcing and he cannot see his kids. Well, let's do a law proposition. And this law proposition was to offer to the judges, all type of judges, judges for the kids, for the penal judges, and the judges for the family, a tool to give a parental guidance. Of course, it has been existing in Canada since 20 years ago, but for France it was quite new. So we did that, we did this proposal, it went through the parliament, and I had a wonderful blue paper with a number of the L'Assemblée des députés, and when you want to meet, Minister of the Justice, you know, I went to the parliament and we have a proposal, and they just look at the blue paper and say, of course, come in. So we work with politicians, we make a lot of questions at the parliament about the social workers, about the judges, about all type of questions. So we got an official response from the Ministry of the Interior Security, of the Justice, because it's obligatory, they have to respond. We participate in political debates on all types of family issues, and at the same time, with this blue paper, we ask French professionals to write about PA in professional peer reviews. So we have some judges who wrote in peer reviews about PA, attorneys too. And then finally, we offered training courses with all these trusted sources, because now, after we were really not only bankable, but reliable. So just to go through the newspaper, that type of titles. We participate in movies, not a movie, documentary film about parental alienation. It was on the official France 5 TV at 20:30. It's a very good hour, and it went twice, once in 2010 and the second time in 2013. The first time an attorney was discussing the movie on the plateau, on the stage. And the second time they invited me to discuss and ask what happened with these parents who have been filmed 3 years ago, what happened to them nowadays. Okay. So we all support books. These type of congresses, I told you about congresses, so these type of topics we participate in, colloque on parental alienation, and that was in, I don't remember, in 2013, I think. Well, just before I leave you, I would like to clarify what we call parental alienation, in order, if we don't want to be kicked off the court. In France, we have a terminology that is loyalty conflict. All the judges, psychologists, psychiatrists know about loyalty conflict. So, for us, the loyalty conflict is like the stage mild and medium of what you call parental alienation. So let me explain rapidly. The curve you have, that's a number of parental couples that are separating. You see the main, of course, and thanks to God, there are much more people separating with a mutual agreement about the kids. Then you have some conflict about the kids, about the custody, education. So these parents, they are not able to find an agreement together. They need help. That can be outside help. It can be friends, it can be family, it can be the judge, it can be a mediation. So we have tools to help them. Well, 1 and 2 are kind of mild, but what you call stage 1. When you go to 3, the conflict or the war is kind of tougher. And one parent has difficulty to get their visitation rights respected. And you see that the loyalty conflict is higher than the parental authority. Then you have to go to court and you need a penal response. You can open a case for non-respect of civilian decision on visitation rights. Well, if you have a normal, so-called normal person, they will obey to law and the decision of the court. So they have has the explanation of the law. They have some penal mediation. They might have prison, but suspended prison. Well, to go to jail, first we have no room in our jails. It's over loaded. So that's difficult, but sometimes people go to jail. Well, or the kid can be taken apart and go to another family. But you have a response, and the court response works. Then you have some people, a few, you say 3, 5, I don't know how many percent, they don't respect court decision, they will never respect court decision, they don't respect the other spouse, the companion, the other parent. And here you are in a severe PA situation. Usually court intervention is unuseful. And never forget that there is another category when the parent is against law, against the other parent, but against society, against everything, and he or she can kill the kids and commit suicide after that. Every 2 weeks we have kids killing in France because people are desperate. They know that PA have no solution. So when they lose their temper, when they lose their control, and that's each case is a different case, you know that. Remember, they can kill the kids, and the people say, "Wow, it looks so normal. We don't expect that from him." Well, the difficult things, human beings are complex systems, so we can start in category 1, and if the other parent get a terrific, a very good life, marry and have children, very quickly for the kid the situation can split and go to 3 or 4. So we are a complex system, and we can change for the better, but change for the worse. Well, so I invite you just to finish. When we do our training courses, we offer training courses. We invite professionals to do these training courses. I do only the introduction. Then we have a judge, we have a psychologist, we have an attorney, and they are the trainers. And of course they are well known and respected and trusted people. And I just wanted to show you the emphasis, the focus I give to the preferred alienator, parent, the so-called alienator. To explain how it works, let's say that parental alienation is child abuse. In French, it's penal. It's called abus. It's not a parental alienation, but it's based on abus de faiblesse on vulnerable person. We have a very well-known psychiatrist, Marie-France Irigoyen, who wrote 36 pages on manipulation and brainwashing, and the chapter about manipulation and brainwashing of minors is on parental alienation. And Marie-France Irigoyen is a Bible for all the French people. So, and I explain how it works, and how it can work for anybody that will separate or even don't want to separate. It's like, that's a very typical and commonly used brainwashing strategy. First you seduce, then you make an alliance, then you isolate the child, based on fear and intimidation. You destroy all the positive memories. At the same time, you implant a new life story. And then we asked to Johnny has 12 years old. Johnny, now you understand how bad and dangerous your dad are. You understand that. And you understand how I care about you. And I will take care of you all my life. My life is dedicated to you, Johnny. But that's your choice. Johnny, you're only 12, but you're grown up. You're a big person, so you choose. You have to choose. And the child is compelled to choose. So that's your choice. Do you want to live with a dangerous, evil father, can be evil mother, same thing, or you want to be in heaven with me? Johnny choose. But take your time. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Johnny has only nightmares. He hasn't slept the whole night, and the next day he chooses, Mom, I stay with you. Oh, thank you, Johnny. I was ready to commit suicide. But Johnny, I want to be sure that, let's be sure that you did the right choice. And then the child is engaged to an action. And this action will be definite for his engagement. Let's write a letter to the judge. And these horrible letters the children are writing to judges, always remember they're not writing with a pen, they're writing with their blood. It's a metaphor, of course. But this is an engagement. It's just dismissing one parent. And it's very easy. It's like to go to a sect. It's the same strategy. The same strategy if somebody wants you to buy something, to sell you something you don't need, a super car. Your engagement will be the check. You're going to buy something you don't need. Well, and to talk about the kids, where it's we base, that's all. We based on the 8 manifestations. They are recognized by judges in court. Parental alienation has been recognized by the Supreme Court in France in 2013 after a decision in appeal court. And Supreme Court recognized that the appeal court was right in her decision to reopen a case based on a psychiatric evaluation demonstrating parental alienation. So the words parental alienation are written somewhere in the Supreme Court decision. Well, maybe my website. So, and the last thing we did with all the professionals, our fellow professionals, we wrote a book. And I thank Dr. Bernard, who wrote the preface of this book. Broca is a psychiatrist, but if you look at the authors, they're all compelled, involved professionals, judges, attorneys, psychiatrists, and psychologists. They are all well-known psychiatrists, yeah. And that's for the professional, the support for professional like books, and for these who like glossy cover kind of magazines, we have yearly it's a newspaper. It's a report, annual report. But in this report, we know everything what happened in France and which one in Europe too about parental alienation. So we're citing judges, attorneys, the publication, and the reference is Dalloz. Just like in America, you have some the APA Bible. That's so. Please and go to our website, and you have everything in the website. Thank you very much for your attention. That was the unexpected present for you.
So the idea from the beginning was from Bill's side that we should have like a discussion, a dialogue, but now it's only 15 minutes left. I just want to confirm the severity that in my book with 25 Swedish cases of parental alienation, 8 of them were mothers who lost their children and the rest fathers, and among these 25 cases 5 people died. 1 grandmother, 1 mother, 1 father, and 2 children.
Are you open for questions?
No, I want to give the word to Wilfred first, or I can put a question. I have a question to Veronica. You told about your experiences of making films, and that you are an actor, and I want to know if you have thought of making a film on parental alienation.
I have, and I have briefly discussed it with Dr. Burnett, and I just don't see an angle. Because if I'm gonna make, like for example, when I made the film, The Different Shades of Autism, it was simple. You know, the screening and diagnosis of autistic spectrum disorders, you could teach. So how would you do an educational film about the guidelines? I mean, I don't know if somebody could come up with a script or an outline that would make sense. I'm totally open to it. But again, making the film is the easy part. You have to have, who is your targeted audience, okay? And when I made The Different Shades of Autism, my targeted audience was the American Academy of Pediatrics. Because I knew the pediatricians did not know autism. This is going back to '92. So if we were to make a film about parental alienation, you know, I would be interested if the targeted audience would be judges, attorneys, or maybe legislature passing a law. You know, I would be interested, but to tell my sad story, no.
No, I agree with you. You should not tell your sad story in a film. But then I know that you have made several video films in Acalpa, and they are short. Can you tell what is the most? You said you only do positive things. What have you found most positive to do?
Well, the most positive is obviously the website, and then we have a Facebook, and we have a Daily Motion site, and we have a lot of videos. So, and these videos, we just pick up the interviews of the professionals, and we try to pick up famous and well-known professionals and do a kind of les impliquer, to make them, when they talk about parental alienation. And that's very good, because it was a TV program, or they're not only parents talking about their stories. We have also stories on our website. If we go to the témoignages, testimonies, you have all our videos. If not, you have Acalpa Facebook, and on our Facebook, the same thing like in Acalpa, we have half women and half men who are writing and intervening.
So do you want to say something, Wilfred, or shall we give the voice to the floor now? Okay. So Robert, you had something.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for everyone on the panel for you pouring your heart out in this most very difficult topic. Olga, you mentioned a risk policy approach, correct?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that stood out for me when you presented the list was the notion of prevention is obligatory. Has your group talked about or brainstormed what preventatory steps would be helpful in preventing parental alienation or minimizing the potential of it happening?
Well, now there are about 10 or 12 courts that are experimenting obligatory mediation before divorce.
Mediation? Okay.
Mediation,
Yeah.
Obligatory.
Mm-hmm.
So it went, these are prevention, yeah, but nowadays we're in a kind of, well, I want prevention. You saw our folders, and they are black and white and red. These are very well-known colors for prevention of violence against the woman. So that's why we took the same colors. No, prevention is a mediation, obligatory mediation before divorce
Have you
or separation.
have you promoted the concept of shared parenting as a prophylactic?
A lot of other groups do that. We are not, how I say, we're in favor of course, shared parenting, because in the category 1 on this my diagram, most of the parents they practice shared parenting, but they don't need any judge to do that. They have an arrangement among them. Sometimes we have shared parenting that turns very bad. So we don't want to promote a model. There is no one single model. Depends on the families, depends on the couple. So that's why we are focusing on the rights of the child. And the right of the child is to have both parents and both families.
You see the synergy?
Independently of the visitation system,
Now there is
of the custody system.
Olga, there is research saying very clearly that the right for the child and to be well and develop well is to have contact with both parents on an everyday basis.
Yes.
A weekend father or a weekend mother does not give that quality of life with own experiences from a daily life that the child is most promoted by. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
This is research, for example, from Sweden, from a chess group in Karolinska Institute. Yes.
Well, I think the dream of a child is to have both parents every day, and the parents don't divorce.
No, but I don't mean
so
that.
definitely, except one parent is violent and with some problem.
So this comes with, we only speak about good enough parents. I think we have to know about that. And Veronica told about the father who was not identified as well, good enough father. I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
So then there are special problems with not good enough parents. But if parents are good enough, it's best for the child to have some kind of daily life. How you make it up, as you say, it's individual for every couple and every family. Is there someone else who wants to say something now, before lunch? Otherwise, I have seen someone falling a little to sleep, so I think we need energy now. Energy input. Okay.